Just keeping you guys updated on the steps I'm doing here. Last night, got the flywheel. I put in the 3 dowel pins. The clutch comes with instructions on where to put the dowel pins, so hammered those in. Really tight fit into the flywheel, so you know I had to really hammer those on with a hammer. Really loud. You're going to want to use earplugs. Next up, I'm going to pull the old pilot bearing out of my car. So this is the new one. You're going to install this flat flush part facing towards the transmission, facing out. This part where you can kind of see the bearing walls is going to go inward towards the motor, so it's going to go in that way. To pull out the old one, I'm going to use a method I saw on YouTube. I can't remember the guy's name, but tons of people do this. You can go to Craig & O'Reilly's AutoZone, get a slide hammer like this one you can rent. It was like $57, I think, and it's free. It's $57 deposit, and then you go back and return this within 48 hours and you get your money back. So slide hammer, and then I got this pilot bearing puller, this guy here. So what's going to happen is, focus here, closer. So this is supposed to go into the old pilot bearing that's inside my car right now, and then you're supposed to twist this knob, and then this will kind of open up, and then you connect this threads on to the hammer, slide hammer, and then you just keep hitting it out until it yanks the pilot bearing out. But this does not come small enough, if you could see, into the pilot bearing. So what you have to do, I saw this guy do on this YouTube video, is he took a pin tap, he tapped out one of these silver pins right here so you could remove one of these little fingers, and then you slide in one, slide in the other, tap it in there while you're under the car, and so it will be at that point all the way through the bearing, and then you can hook up your slide hammer and then start hitting it, and then it'll yank it out. Previously went under the car, sprayed the pilot bearing with a little bit of PB penetrating oil just to help break it loose when I do this. I have my slide hammer, have the pilot bearing puller tool that's going to attach to this, and then see how I have it apart. And so I'm going to, this is the new pilot bearing, but we're gonna pretend this is the old pilot bearing. And I'm up in there. So this is gonna go in first. I'm gonna get that one in there. Then I'm gonna get the other one while I'm up there. Put that one in there. And then put it back together while it's up under the car, and then pull it out. Alright, so there you have it. Used vice grips to pinch the pin back in once I got both those fingers into the pilot bearing. But this is it. Twisted this so the fingers would spread, and they're inside there. So I'm just gonna thread in my slide hammer into here, and then just start pulling and start knocking that pilot bearing out. There it is. Probably took about 15 to 20 hits. Not super hard. I was just kind of giving regular hits to it with the slide hammer, and it started breaking the bearing, and then I thought it was just going to bust it and rip out and not pull the bearing out, but the bearing started coming slowly, and then all of a sudden it popped out. So now I'm going to thwack the new one back in there. I'm going to use a piece of wood so I don't damage the new bearing. So I'm just starting to tap in the new bearing, just using a 6-inch ratchet extension and a hammer. But in between that, I'm using a little block of wood
so I don't, you know, put metal to metal and maybe mess up or deform the bearings. So this is a good softening between them. So just slowly tapping it in until I get it flush. Alright, so good 10 minutes of whacking that thing in with the hammer, and finally it sits flush. It looks good, and now we're going to start throwing everything back up. I just threw my flywheel up here, kind of shimmied it on there, and now I'm putting the bolts on, threading those on. Put some red Loctite on them. I know you're supposed to use GM red Loctite with sealant or something that they ultimately want you to use, but I know plenty of guys who've used the red Loctite, so I'm just going with that. Next up, the instructions say to take some brake cleaner to clean the flywheel surface. So I'm just going to do that now, get off all the fingerprints and oils. Next up, I'm going to do the same thing with the pressure plate. Just spray a little brake clean on my rag and then just wipe it and clean it up, since that'll be having a surface with the clutch disc. I'm going to take the alignment tool here that they give you, put it through the clutch, and then the other side of the alignment tool is going to go into the pilot bearing. Alright, seat's good. Pressure plate's got to go on a certain way. There's holes for the dowel pins to go through. And get a bolt in here to kind of help me just hold it down just for now so it doesn't fall. What you have here, you know, is the assembly pretty much put on right now. I just need to thread in some bolts, torque them down to spec, but the alignment tool is still in there. I'll zoom in for you. Focus. And you know, the alignment tool's right there, and you can kind of wiggle it around, and the disc will kind of wiggle around in there too. So I guess you're just trying as best you can to just kind of wiggle it a little bit and get it as centered as best you think it is. And then once you bolt up the pressure plate and torque down the bolts, you know, then pull this out. My last pass here for the pressure plate at 52 pound-feet of torque, and then I'll be done in there. Pattern is 146253. One, two, three, four is next. So this is it. All bolts were red thread locked. Everything was bolted in its right sequence and to its right torque specs. I got the clutch disc as centered as I thought it could. Pull it out now, and that's it. So now I get to pick up my, well, first we'll get the bell housing on there, bolt that on, and then bolt up the tranny to it. So all 8 bell housing bolts have been torqued to spec, 37 foot-pounds of torque. I'm going to torque the transmission bolt, same thing, 37 foot-pounds of torque. I'm about to throw this up and back into the car right now. Before I put it up, I'm just going to loosen the bleeder valve on the slave, because I have to anyway to get the fitting back on. So I managed to prop the front up of the transmission with a big cinder block. And then I got my floor jack under the tail, so I'm just going to start jacking up the tail, get it kind of nice and even, get under there, and then just muscle it in. Got the tranny almost all the way up there. It's like a couple eighths of an inch away from getting fully closed to the bell housing, but yeah, that's the tranny, or the floor jack still up there supporting the transmission a little bit until I get the transmission mount, whatever, cross member thing on. But kind of show you guys what I did. Okay, so you can see it's about that far away, almost got it. So once I got it up there, I took out my cinder block away from here and got under this, the front end of the tranny, bench pressed it up there, put it up there and wiggled it in as much as I could. It got about 3/4 of an inch away from here. There was a 3/4 of an inch crack there. So once I got it up there, I got like 5 bolts, the 5 bottom tranny bolts, and then I just threaded them in there just to help me hold it. So when I needed a little bit of a break, or if it slid back a little bit, I wasn't going to lose how far I had gone in. So then after I put the bolts on, then I'd get under it again, kind of wiggle it, just wiggle it back and forth, pushing it as hard as I could towards the engine, and then it'd get a little closer, and then I'd go back, thread those 5 bolts in a little more just to hold it as far as I've gotten. And then now I'm just about to close up that crack there, and then I'll start buttoning everything up. So everything went good. I didn't have to take it all back down and realign the clutch disc or anything, because if you don't have that clutch disc centered pretty good, then your input shaft, I think it's called, of the transmission isn't going to go straight into the pilot bearing back there. It's going to be crooked, and then you're not going to be able to get the tranny in. You're going to have to take it all back down. So I'll keep going. So I just got the torque arm mount put back on. I'm just finishing up putting on the trans cross member here, and then I'm going to put on the drive line. Then I can put on my shifter, the console, and then see if this thing runs. Before I put the shifter on, I'm just going to fill up the transmission with fluid from the shifter from the top up here.